Looking through Cason's report the other day, and there were 2 points that really just kind of jumped off of the page at me, and I just want to kind of walk you through a couple of these and just kind of share some thoughts on a couple points. Hi, I'm Greg Lafferty, the Rocket Guide. We have this wonderful guy in our office named Cason. So he formulates these Cason's reports for us to kind of bring up to our attention some of the current economic trends so we can make better decisions as we're investing. And one is nearly half of Americans feel like, hey, it's going to take me over $1 million in savings to really retire. Not necessarily comfortably retire, but really retire when they get there. But really only about half of that, 20 some odd percent, are saying they even feel confident in getting there. And of course, $1 million sounds like a huge chunk of money, you know, when you're making minimum wage. That's really tough. But hey, look, these are people that are not sitting there going, hey, I want to live in luxury. These are people that just say, how can I even afford to live and eat and meet my basic needs? And another one that kind of comes out, this jumped out, is that more and more people in like a 20 some odd year history are taking multiple jobs. And so the two kind of go together. You know, how do we save for retirement? How do we do that? But then also, how are we meeting our basic needs today? And that's really what's driving the multiple jobs problem, is that, hey, people are struggling to find groceries. How do I make enough today to feed my family, to put meals on the table? And then also, but I've got to save. And how do I do that? So there's a real huge gap there. What's expected in the future, but how do I fight today? And so let's talk a little bit about that. You know, here at Branch, we try to take a long-term perspective on building wealth. We don't want to sacrifice being able to gather up groceries for today, but we need more margin in our life. We need that extra room, and we believe in good stewardship. How do we manage the resources that we've been given today and then save for the long term so that we have a real good long-term perspective with cash generating, revenue generating assets, not trying to live on the assets? Two different problems. And how do we then structure it so that someone else buys those assets for us? How are we going to do that and not have to take money out of our own pocket necessarily to be able to do that? And that's what we're here to talk about. We're going to talk about 3 principles to be able to tackle this problem, not just in a pressure reflex kind of reactionary mode, but more of a planning, structured, methodical process to get you from, hey, look, I'm just struggling from buying groceries, to, hey, I have a real plan in getting to retirement. So principle number 1, we need to build financial margin in our life. We need to have room in our budget. And that's why we have the tools for budget planners and personal financial statements to know kind of where you are today, what your thought process is today, what's your mindset. Are we spending every dollar we make and then some? Are we setting aside money for emergency savings? Or kind of think of that Dave Ramsey model, right? Cut up the credit cards and let's kind of live wisely. Is that what we're doing, and build that extra margin in our life so we can take the next step? Or are we just kind of like blowing it out there on the edge? Okay. Principle number 2, work is good, but it has limits. Look, you know, it's okay to have a second job, but what we don't want to do is kill all the extra margin in our life. You know, we need rest. We need to spend time with our families, and we don't really want to do things that necessarily trade hours for money. So we need to be able to leverage that time so that we're actually trading ideas, trading thoughts and concepts for money. Principle number 3, we're not just shooting for a number. We're shooting more for a concept and for a goal. Hey, look, $1 million might be fine, but it might not yield the results that you're really looking for. What kind of lifestyle do we want when we retire? What does that even look like? Are we here in North Carolina, or are we in Southern California? What are we looking for? The number might be different based on those circumstances. I coach people all the time. Hey, look, you need to think about your lifestyle today, and what's that picture look like when you reach that age of retirement? And first of all, what is that age? And then how much income am I going to need for that to sustain myself for the rest of my life? You know, to say it's $1 million, well, that's kind of a little farsighted. You didn't really put a plan together. We just threw a number out. So that's not what we're after either. So let's put some margin in our life, and let's not trade hours and dollars. And hey, look, let's have a real goal, not just a random number. Take those 3 principles to heart, and let's get a real game plan together. And let's not overly stress ourselves, but let's work a plan with a long-term horizon. So if you're hearing all this and thinking, wow, that all sounds great, but where do I even start? Well, don't worry. We've got great resources out there, a lot of great free resources as far as figuring out where you are today with a personal financial statement and kind of working through that in your budget tools, but then also downloading our free guide for beyond the 9 to 5 to be able to take from where you are today to get beyond the 9 to 5 and go chase your dreams. And don't forget to dream big. You can never dream too big. Find your freedom out there.